entrepreneurial thing.
What's up, Podcast Nation? This is Nick Overby, your host of the New Agent Podcast, live from the Den, once again here in Fort Worth, Texas. I am being joined, that doesn't make no sense. I have joining me today not necessarily a new agent in the Den, but somebody who's been here for a while. His name's Andrew Tourigny. I call him Lou Ferrigno. And then you go by Gandy, right?
Gandy, yes. That stands for Gay Andy.
I'm glad that you were okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Who gave you
it was a natural trend.
Who gave you the name, though?
I'm pretty sure Anna Schafoister gave me that name.
The fact that you can phonetically pronounce her name like that is awesome because not very many people
When you
can.
have a shitty last name like Tourigny, you gotta make up for it and make sure you can pronounce other people's names.
I get over Bay. I get over.
That's what I thought your name was when I first came here. I thought it was Over Bay.
Yeah, most people, the E doesn't really fit in well. My grandfather put that in. I don't know why, but I guess it was just to maybe be different. But that is what it is. So, back for season 2. I know it's been a while since I've done a podcast, but I'm super stoked to have you here just because, quite frankly, man, I enjoy your company. And that's not to sound weird, but you bring a different element to the Den that not very many people, I think, can appreciate, or at least maybe not as many do.
I try to constantly be the fourth most entertaining person in the room because if you try to be the most entertaining, then you're always in the limelight. But if you have fun jokes to say, every now and then you have a fun little quirk to throw out into the mix, then catches people's attention, and then you can just kind of lay low in the background. But I never want to be a Perry Lunsford type person. That's not my shtick.
It's too much to bear.
No, if I had that much charisma, I probably would implode on myself just because it's too much pressure. But
that's fair. I mean, Perry is a very charismatic guy. Very intelligent, and he's the reason why we're here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's if you've ever watched or anybody's ever watched this show, they've seen kind of they've got an inside look into the Den, the agents here, and they know that we're not just people sitting in a cubicle dialing $100 or whatever it is a day. We actually give a crap about the people.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be here if that were the case.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to know because your interview process was a lot different than mine. And so what did that look like for you? And then when you met Perry, I'd be curious to hear what your interaction was.
So basically the way that it kind of went down was I was a PhD potential candidate at one point. And when that didn't work out, I no longer had the potential to get into the PhD program. I was absolutely miserable. So I tried to go for a financial advisor position. First thing you have to get with that is a health and life license. And after I got that license, the company I was being sponsored under basically just said, hey, go kick rocks. We got somebody else to do it. So I walked in here under that Tierra Vista listing that they do on Indeed, and it just said that it was a business-to-business thing. So I walked in thinking it was business-to-business, and one of the first people who ever walked up to me was Chandler, and he asked me, do you have a health and life license? I was like, yeah, that's kind of a weird thing to just straight up ask, considering this is a business-to-business thing. And got to sit down and talk with a few different people in the area, and then they brought me back for a second interview. And I think I talked to like 2 or 3 people in the entire like hour-long sit-in that we do. And then ultimately Perry brought me back into the room, said he really liked the cut of my jib, so to speak, and sat down and said, here's how much I make a year. And kind of flabbergasted me because I've met plenty of millionaires. I know famous D-list actor Greg Kinnear, not that shocking to see a millionaire, but to have somebody be so open and honest about it and not shove it in your face that I'm better than you.
Yep.
That was what stood out to me because in academia, I was working around a bunch of 65-year-old white dudes who were just ready to retire and croak. And so coming into an office of where I think we did the average age of the office is like 33, 34.
Really?
Yeah, it's relatively young.
I feel like that's high.
Oh, I mean, dude, we have a bunch of people in here who are like fresh out of high school. So
yeah, I feel like that is, man, I'm wrong. I mean, maybe I'm wrong because I feel like a mass majority of people in here are under 30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have a ton of people. Like I myself, I'm 25. I mean, I think our entire FTA team is under the age of 30, except for one
Stoner
person.
And Jamie. Stoner and Jamie are the only 2 FTAs that aren't under 30.
Yeah.
Or are you talking about Justice's team?
Justice's team as well is also under that. But I think there's only 3 people who are over the age of 40 on the FTA. So, being a relatively young office, that was something that I liked because I came into my own with my own academic community, and like I was the youngest person in our office by about 15 years. So, going from a place where I didn't really I don't want to say I didn't fit in, but I was in a completely different age demographic. What I liked was 1,000 times different than what somebody else liked. If you say you like something like Florida Georgia Line, for example, somebody's like, oh, I know Conway Twitty. And it's like, well, there's a difference between 60s country and 2000s country. And as stupid as of an analogy as that is, it felt like there was no similarities and no connect between each other. And, you know, my background being in psychology, the biggest thing that I learned was, like, you know, how to connect with people, how to understand people on a psychological level, how to read people's emotions and adapt to that. And not having that there in that office, because everybody there was a completely different person from me. I didn't have any personalities. I didn't have any friends in there. The only person who I had in the entire department was my husband, who I brought on to a different lab. I kind of got him in there, and now because of that, he's a PhD student, and I'm a health advisor. So weird how the turntables.
Who's making more money though?
Me, pretty easily.
Kind of funny how that works.
I mean, he makes like $28,000 a year as a graduate student. It's pretty pitiful. But yeah.
I mean, that's how. However, that's, you know, I think I met your husband one time, and it was a Top Golf, and that he seems. If I were to put you and him side by side, he's obviously the introvert.
Actually, no, it's the other way around.
Really?
Steve is 100% the extrovert. He is one of the most socialite-esque people I've ever met, at least from my personal friend group. He has an ability to disperse himself into other groups in a way that very few people can. He's a natural-born talker. He finds topics to talk about on a near constant basis. And the way that he's able to communicate with people is far better than what I can do. I feel like if Steve was in my shoes and he came in this office, he would have been one of those people who hits his 100K in 5 weeks.
Really?
He has this natural ability to sell. The way that I always kind of view it is if he could sell snow to an Eskimo, he probably would have, type deal, just because it's such a natural process for him. But, I mean, from the very moment I met him, we both met in our undergraduate degree. We were both getting a psychology degree. And from that moment, basically, as soon as we were actually a couple, it became very clear he wanted to be a PhD student. And so knowing from the very get-go that's what he wanted to be, knowing that that's what he was striving for, there's never been a moment of doubt in our 6 years of being in a relationship that I didn't think he was going to be successful at this. And now, not only is he probably the best PhD student in his entire program, he's one of the best presenters. He has one of the best PhD proposals out there on the entire campus.
Really?
He's a fantastic researcher, and seeing his ability to step out of the scientific community and talk to people and present himself in a completely novel way that most people probably wouldn't recognize him for is really incredible to watch that, because I know him as who I know him as, and when people get to see him, you know, kind of peacock himself out into whatever social environment he's in, it's really crazy to see that.
Man, I would actually, you know, now I'm intrigued. I would love to see this because I say this because I've only gotten to watch you. I mean, you're with, for lack of a better term, pretty incredible at what you do. You are very articulate, and it's more about you understanding the client. And I love that you utilize your background, your psychology degree in that. I mean, it's obvious. Like you don't have to showboat it. We can see that that's how you handle it.
And the thing is, like, a lot of people misuse psychology degrees because they use it to get a leg up on other people.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, like, the only thing that I really use for my degree on a day in and day out basis is the ability to adaptively listen to people, to understand people's emotions and why, like in the example of like us doing health insurance, it's to understand why they're looking for coverage. Like, who do they need on their coverage? What's the reason that they're going away from an employer plan or a marketplace plan? Like, there's reasons behind every single one of those. And much like many other agents in this office or any place will tell you, every client you are talking to is a puzzle. And it may be a very simple puzzle. It may be a very complex puzzle. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you are trying to solve their problem in a way that you are not going to solve it for anybody else. That policy may look the same as a lot of other people's, but their situation is unique to themselves. So being able to adaptively listen to that and adjust accordingly is something that I think is extremely helpful, because not only does it build client retention, it builds trust that even if they never refer another person over to you, that person and their family trust you wholeheartedly. And that's something that's really important to me whenever I talk with somebody. I don't want them thinking that I'm BSing people, because with health insurance, the way that I kind of view it is on the totem pole of respect for people who call you out of the blue. People who call you about your extended car warranty are like right there, and health insurance agents are right there. So being able to differentiate yourself and get a little bit higher up on that totem pole is something that a lot of agents struggle with because they don't know how to disconnect the hard sell. It's not a matter of trying to sell these people. It's a matter of putting them in the right spot.
Solving a problem.
Paycheck or no paycheck.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, this is my opinion, if you don't see, or if you're an agent and you don't see what we do as solving a problem, that I think is going to be the foundation of the issue, because we're presenting a solution to an issue, and that's what sales is.
Yeah.
Always has been, always will be. And I think too many people, like to your point about being pushy, is they're more worried about their paycheck than they are the client's needs. And
1,000%.
I am a firm believer that the insurance business does not have an insurance problem. It has an agent problem.
Yep.
And that agent problem is that the hierarchy of their needs is agent first, client way down here.
Yeah.
Right. Where I know is everybody in this office, with me included, is agent, company, person.
Yep.
Right. And I'm the person. I'm sorry. Person, company, agent.
Well, and the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge, because when I first got started, I did run into that same problem. It was I need to make a paycheck because I'm in a job where I don't have a guaranteed paycheck. But being able to get to that point where you understand I may not be able to make a paycheck on this person, and that's okay. That's a big step for a lot of people to take mentally with this job. Because at the end of the day, I have to sleep at night knowing that somebody is on a crappy insurance policy. I have to sleep at night knowing that they're on the greatest policy. And so I would much rather be able to sleep peacefully knowing that I've put somebody on a plan or helped them get on a plan that's going to benefit them long term.
Correct.
Because I could just as easily throw as many people as I want into some shitty insurance plan that at the end of the day, they're going to call me and say, this doesn't cover what I need. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I made a great paycheck.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
You know, it's funny. So when the den was closed off,
over this wall over here.
So this wall was closed off, and there was a little office there. And it's actually kind of ironic. Those two lights that are there, when they demoed the room, they didn't cut the power to those lights, so there's those two lights that stay on constantly. And that was the room. And I remember I was taking a phone call. It was an HID lead. I'd probably been here for like 2-3 months. And I'm in that room, and I'm trying my hardest to and I guess it was conning, but get this lady from a work plan. And she was like, that's the best option for her. And I'm like, fuck, you're right. And that lady, Anne Marie, still refers me clients to this day, because it wasn't about making the sale. It was about making sure my client knew what they were in, why it was the best decision, and why going anywhere else was fucking stupid, regardless of what any other agent tells you.
A really big thing to make a point about is there's 1,000 self-help books on being a better salesman. There's 1,000 YouTube videos on being a better salesman. If you wanted to be a salesman who could one call close every single client out there, you'd be doing it. But in the eyes of Yusha, you'd be having a 30% take-in rate and probably wouldn't be working in this company. The bottom line is there's going to be clients that you can't help on an underwritten policy. But that's not what's important. Sometimes you talk with clients who, when you hear what they have, you go, well, shit, I can't help you. And that's a good thing. Because anybody else who tries to tell you that they can help you, they're lying to you. Being able to come into this office for after a week of training in any health insurance job, you probably know more than about 70 to 80% of the entire U.S. population. Because to be truthful, not a lot of people know a lot about health insurance. But when you work in this office, you know not only more than probably about 90% of the U.S. population, you know more than probably about 85% of health agents across the board. Yeah. Because a lot of health agents, they're just reading the brochure to you rather than us actually going through and learning the products, learning how to address the right situation at the right time, learning when's the right time to put somebody in underwritten, when's the right time to put somebody in marketplace, and kind of commingling those together to give yourself a better, well-rounded agent. That's something that a lot of agencies are sorely lacking. Why there's agencies with double or triple the amount of agents that we have.
Still doing the same volume.
Yep. It's just a matter of we produce a better quality over quantity. Because
we give a shit about our clients.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
At the end of the day, this is a numbers game. You can.
Hey, Isaiah, you grab me a beer out of the fridge?
But
yeah, absolutely you can.
At the end of the day,
I don't lie, bro. Sorry about that, guys.
You're good. You're good. At the end of the day, health insurance is a numbers game. That's all it boils down to. Yep. How many clients do you have in your portfolio? How many of them are going to continue to renew their policy? If you have 500 clients versus 5 clients, it makes a big deal. But at the end of the day, would I rather have 100 clients on shitty policies, or would I rather have 25 to 50 clients on great policies? I'd rather take the smaller number
100%.
because at the very least I know that those people are taken care of long term.
I'd rather make. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'd rather make $100,000 a year, knowing that every single one of my clients is not only in the right place, but they are happy with it, versus making $1 million a year and losing sleep over. Well, fuck.
I mean, I didn't get into research because I was an unethical person.
Right.
I did drug addiction research for almost 5 years,
Which is really cool to talk about, which we will do here in a minute, because you told me some really cool shit. By the way,
But the thing is, like with anything that you do that requires ethics, like
thank you, brother.
anything can be ethical, anything can be unethical. It's just a matter of how you treat things.
Yep.
If you want to be an unethical salesman and you want to make as much money as you humanly can, it's not that hard to do it. If you want to do unethical research and promote it and become a world-renowned researcher despite the fact that you're a fraud, people can do it. It just happened with Alzheimer's research not that long ago. So anybody can do that. But the bottom line is, does it really benefit you? Does it really benefit the people around you? I could make a lot of money and make it so that when my husband graduates from his PhD, he doesn't have to work. Or I could, do the right thing, make my clients. Oh no, he has to work. We're dual income, no kids. Who cares? That's fine by me. I would much rather do something that's going to benefit us long term and create a better solution for people long term. Because, for example, I had a client the other day. She's one of my favorite clients. It just so happens to be the biggest policy I've ever put in at all. But she and her daughter.
How much was the AV?
It was like 18,000, roughly around there.
Well done,
and she had her daughter had an emergency appendectomy. She messaged me and she's like, "Hey, I want to make sure this is covered on our policy." Looked it over. She had it was completely covered under her medium sickness deductible, whatever it was.
I'm gonna bleep out.
Yeah,
and probably the frame. No, I try to. Real quick side segue real quick. So my friend Nick, who runs State Farm Agency in Georgia, we did Nick and Nick, the Insurance Dude podcast. We had 10 episodes. It was really actually got a lot of attraction, but State Farm sent him a cease and desist letter. And so I try to, not that I'm going to do it because we don't really talk about products. And, and stuff,
that makes sense.
But just moving forward. We'll know.
Yeah, but I built a maxed policy for them because it's what they asked for. And when their daughter had their emergency appendectomy, she told me like, "Hey, my daughter had severe sepsis, and because of that, she had to stay in the hospital for 8 days." Their entire deductible was paid for if their entire medical bill was $98,000, and instead of paying $98,000, they paid what was it, like $11,000 or something like that was their max out of pocket all told. And they're like, this literally changed us having to potentially close down one of our businesses in our family. That was a big thing. That was 4 months into this job. And realizing like, oh my God, this actually helped somebody. I'm not just I'm not making people pay $1,000 for a card that sits in their wallet.
Dude, I had a call earlier with a guy who just left his job. He's an airplane mechanic. Got sold on a marketplace plan. The guy was like, "Oh, I just need the what you're gonna make for the rest of the year, and that'll determine your subsidies." And then he was like, "I'm only gonna make like $15,000 for the next year, for the rest of the year." So he told me I can get a free health insurance plan, and I'm like, "I was lying to you."
Yeah.
Because anyways, it's amazing to see what impact you can have on people. Okay, so I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Favorite sales movie?
Favorite sales movie? It's kind of hard to say. I really like Boiler Room. And I mean, obviously Wolf of Wall Street's going to be up there just because it's a fun movie to watch. Okay. Even if it's not 100% accurate, it's still fun to see.
Fair enough. Tommy Boy for me.
Tommy Boy's a fantastic one. I honestly forget that Tommy Boy's a sales movie because it's mainly just, Chris Farley and David Spade having a great time.
Well, for me, and this is back to why I got so it's a little quick story. I when I got hired here, it was August 1st. The first podcast I did was August 10th. I did it because I was sitting in my mom's house and we were all bullshitting and drinking, and I was like, man, I want to document this because this was new to me. Right? This is something I want to get into with you. But this was new to me, and so I wanted people to see that not only were insurance agents, because I knew coming to the den this wasn't a typical office. So I wanted to have an opportunity to show people that. And I think that Tommy Boy has the best representation of what the journey of becoming a good salesman is like, where you get the shit kicked out of you day in and day out, and you just keep moving, and you're trying to figure it out, right? Like, yeah, it's cool, the culture of Boiler Room, the culture of Wolf of Wall Street, but the individual journey that Tommy Callahan had to go through to become what he did at the end of the movie was very, very similar to what I felt like I had experienced
And it's
in
also
previous years.
a big thing about that is it's more of a humbling experience rather than, just dealing with a bunch of millionaires who are making a shit ton of money. Tommy Boy, obviously, like, his dad made a lot of money, but, like, at the end of the day, like, he had to learn from humble roots. He wasn't just handed everything on a golden platter.
Yeah, because they were going to take it from him, right?
Exactly.
He had to get it back.
In my eyes, I view that as a better opportunity to kind of learn something from a movie, even though it's as comical as it can be. It's a better learning opportunity for people in general.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and I won't disagree with you on the Wolf of Wall Street and Boiler Room, because that scene in Boiler Room that David showed the other day, and there's multiple other scenes, especially like when he's running his own poker house at his house, and or his own casino. There were certain things that you saw in those movies, but I think it's the emotional journey that we go through, and what I had always wanted to document of what this was like. And it was, I remember you said your first day when you came in here, there was specific people you talked to, and I remember walking through that door, and where this couch is, there was a table there, and that's where the Facebook team sat. And at the time, the Facebook team was Taz, Stoner, Liz, and Jamie, and that was it. And I remember walking through this little door, and Taz used to sit in this one of those little those little balloon chairs or whatever that Jason sits on.
Yep.
And she looked at me, and I was dressed very nice, and she was like, "Who the fuck are you?" And I looked at her, and I was like, "Who the fuck are you?" And Jamie had bright red hair. It was like the red, like Bryce's shirt right now, like that red. And I remember sitting there and I sat there for a majority of my time here. And I fell in love with this place because, like you said, I can go sell anything, right? That's easy. But who am I selling it with? For me, was always the biggest thing, because I had come from a culture that had identified as this, but wasn't this, right? And that was, for me, very eye-opening, because one thing you mentioned, you said something about Perry earlier that struck a chord in my mind. My friend Nick pointed this out. So if you've ever seen the pictures of the den where it's all the people like here or over there, you ever notice that Perry is always in the back?
Yeah, it's not about him.
And that's one thing that, love him or hate him, whatever you want to do, you got to respect Perry for that, because he always puts this office first. He said it before he left for Europe, and what he's done, and the reason why he gets up is because of us.
Well, because the bottom line is he could make as much money as he possibly wants just doing this himself. But at the end of the day, this isn't about him anymore. He's made his money. He's made his career as successful as he wants. Now it's up to him to make people like you, myself, and the other people in the office as successful as they can be. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter more for him long term, is seeing the generational wealth growth. Like when 100%. I was working in research, I was making after taxes $35,000 a year. I made more than $35,000 in my first 6 months here. So already coming to a point where, without open enrollment included, I'm gonna more than double my salary.
This is your first open enrollment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a whole fucking brand new ball game for you.
Yeah, so this is the point where, like, I'm more than doubling my income year over year. Like, at the point, like, I was paying like $1,600 a month for my apartment, and I wasn't even sure I could afford my rent when I first got in here. And now getting to a point where I don't really worry about my bills. I don't worry about my electricity bill or my car bill, because I paid off my fucking car.
You know what's crazy? I just paid off September rent and October rent yesterday based on the sales I did last month.
Yeah.
So now I'm a month ahead.
Yeah,
like, that doesn't happen.
Being
in
able
most
to
places.
get to that point where you're just like, oh, I can just pay off everything. Like, my car had $16,000 left on it. I looked at my bank account. I looked at Steve and said, hey, you want to pay off the car? We got the extra cash burning a hole in our pocket. Might as well take that $600.
Buy yourself a new tattoo instead.
Yeah, absolutely. might as well, take that $600 a month payment out of our account. So now we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, long term, that's way more advantageous for you guys.
Yeah, it might hurt a little bit in the beginning, but I'm gonna make that money back pretty
quickly.
Well,
and you get a paid off car on your credit now too.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you guys have more doors open just because of that.
And like we've basically only ever done apartment living, and now we're to a point where come November we have a house that's coming open for rent that we're gonna be moving into. Getting to that point where, like, 6 months ago about 8 months ago when I first came in and saw this place, I sat down and was like, there's no way I can realistically change my career in a year, because I didn't know I could pay off my car. I didn't know I could move into a house and make over $100,000 in my first year doing this type of job at the age of 25. And now I'm sitting here going, well, shit, I'm 25 and I'm going to have all this stuff done. If I do everything the way that I want to do it, just like Perry, in 4 years, I could be traveling around doing whatever the hell I want and basically coasting or accelerating as fast as I want. If I want to turn myself into Perry 2.0, I know I can do that. At this point, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when I do that. So that's kind of the mindset you have to take away from it. one of the biggest things I was told when I was first living here or first getting in here is that basically the secret to getting better is to be able to withstand sucking at something. So
It's true.
being able to get over the fact that like you suck at cold calling or the fact that you suck at doing HID calls or whatever it may be, instead of being embarrassed that you suck or refusing to go get help, revel in the fact that you suck at something. Revel in the fact that you need to go talk to Perry about the fact that your pitch sucks, or revel in the fact that you got to go ask
Remove
people.
your fucking ego from it.
Yeah, when you remove your ego from things, it becomes instantaneously better for your career. For example, one of the things that really transformed my career was everybody went off to that little Mexico trip back in May.
Yep.
Yeah, and there was like 6 people in the office each day, and I was like 6 weeks into this office, and they were like, "Figure it the fuck out.
Yep.
Do what you got to do." And I'm sitting here going, I don't even know the products that I'm selling 100%. So how do you expect me to know what I'm doing? And that week I put up 47.
Figure it the fuck out.
Yeah, that week I produced $47,000 in AV.
Is that your best week?
Yeah, that's my best week I've had. Then I blanked the next week
You're
and I was
better
like, well,
than that, by the way.
yeah, I know I can be better.
Yeah, it's
I want to be up at the top row.
If I did 105, you should be able to do more than that.
But like
I'm not that good. Actually, I'm really.
But
fucking
I
good,
wanted to be able to say that I could do this, and I had a great week. That was like a $5,000 paycheck week, and I was like, oh my god, I can do this. And then I blanked the next week, and I was like, you know what, that might have just
whatever it's worth. That was an $11,000 paycheck.
But like the next week I blanked and I was like, maybe it was just blind luck because everybody's out of town. And then the very next week, everybody's back in the office and I put up a $45,000 week. And so I suddenly went from not being able to hit not feeling like I'd hit my 100K 6 weeks into 9 weeks in, I was done. Like,
So I want to stop you real quick because
Yeah.
there's an overwhelming amount of the viewers that watch New Agent Podcast so happen to be agents. Not to divulge too much into how you did it, but I'd be curious to know a little bit about what you did from that week where you knew you had to fucking do it, and then the following week to continue to do it. I mean, I got my ideas.
It wasn't really like I changed anything up. It was so when I came in here, I am a very meticulous person. In academics, you have to annotate everything. You have to write down when you used something, when you did a study, when you did anything like that. You have to have everything written down in very specific details. And when I first came in here and I was first learning how to do everything, I recorded everything. I was legally allowed to record. I recorded phone calls all the way up to banking and routing information. And I would listen to those every single day. And when I started struggling early on, one of the things I did was I took one of those calls. It was a really good call that Justice had done, and I transcribed the entire call from start to finish. Every single word those 2 people said in that entire phone call, I recorded it and I listened to it and I read it over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, I think I know how I need to have these call flows go. And so from there, I looked at my pitches and I didn't change any of the wording of the pitches at all. All I did was I basically put it on a Microsoft Word file, and I adjusted the words of emphasis, like the words like but or now or then. Like in psychology, it's a very big thing having good inflection in your voice.
Of course.
Being able to provide emphasis words like but. Like there's a shitty little joke that Justice will say about like, what is Sir Mix-a-Lot like? He likes big butts and he can't lie about it. So use that to your advantage. Say like, hey, but, and that completely changes the narrative because you can be the most monotone person in the world. But if you throw that one little emphasis word in there, all of a sudden the client's like, oh, I'm listening. And that was a big thing, like getting to that point where I basically said, hey, I have to walk in here like I have a 13-inch dick and say, hey, everybody, look at me. It's Andy Tourigny. Time to sell you an insurance policy. And it's not so much like saying, like getting on the phone call and saying, let's like just immediately starting going, hey, let's get your banking and routing information out of the way.
Yeah.
We're not that pompous, but getting to a phone call where
Even Chet Manley isn't that pompous. You
exactly.
Know who Chet Manley is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good.
Even though like it was kind of hard to get that like flow down, realizing like all I have to do is adjust the words that I like, the way that I'm saying the words. I don't have to adjust the words. I just have to adjust the way I'm saying it. Once I got to that point, that made it way easier to kind of talk to my clients and realize I'm just another person to them. They're just another person to me. I don't need to act like this is a transaction because at the end of the day, all sales is, like you mentioned, it more or less it's going to be a transfer of confidence from one person to another. So being able to identify the fact, like if you're not a confident salesman, the client's going to pick up on that, whether they're the dumbest person alive or the smartest person alive.
Because they can hear it through your voice.
Confidence is a common sense thing. So being able to understand somebody's confidence in what they're telling you goes a long way. If you have a client and you're showing them the best plan in the entire country, but you don't say it confident, they're going to say, well, maybe that's maybe there's better things out there.
Yep.
But if you say it like Perry does and you slam your hand on the table and say, this is the best plan in the country, they're going to say, oh, okay, I guess that is the best plan in the country.
Some people like being told what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so having that ability to kind of show them emphatically rather than just say it like very melancholy or milquetoast, whatever term you want, SAT word you want to use for it, like being able to just present it as a fact, because at the end of the day, stories are what's going to sell your policy. Facts are going to tell your policy, though.
Absolutely.
So being able to differentiate, like, hey, these are the facts, and if you want any testimonials about how the policy works, I can tell you about my past clients, and all of a sudden now they've got information that actually benefits them to some degree. Once I started doing that, this became an incredibly easy job. The only part that's hard is networking for new clients, which every agent is, regardless
Always
of whether
gonna be
you're a
tough.
health insurance
Yeah, it doesn't
agent,
matter.
life, or auto.
New business is always the hardest to obtain.
Yeah,
that's-
absolutely.
That's why Perry always says the next sale comes from your last, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's my buddy Nick always used to tell me. He said, Nick, if you're ever struggling for sales, go back to your book of business, talk to your book of business, converse with them, because they're going to give you referrals quicker than you reaching out to some admin on Facebook through a nursing group that's going to give you a referral,
Yep.
right? Because you've already done the work.
Yep.
You know, you're at that point where it's okay. I built the trust. I love the fact that you said stories sell and facts tell, because that's true. I believe the best sale comes in a conversation.
Yeah.
If you can't relate to somebody and build some sort of trust on a foundational level, you will not gain their trust, and you will not be their agent you might maybe for a month or two, but the best clients I have on my books right now are people I talk to weekly or monthly that call me or text me out of the fucking blue about nothing.
My favorite client, the one that I was talking about earlier with the appendectomy, was a person who I talked to for an hour and a half on the phone. But I've had plenty of people who I've closed in 20 minutes or less, and they don't take their call to get approved for their policy.
Exactly.
And so because of that, like I much rather have the time to explain the policy and understand the client, get to know them and their family. I don't want to just say like, hey, who is your dependent? I want to know, what's your child's name? Like,
dude,
what is
Stoner. I made the mistake one day, and I was here late, and I was putting in an HID lead. It was and still Chastity Henson and her husband are still friends of are still friends to this day. Mm-hmm. They're not on our policy anymore because anyways, that's neither here nor there, but they were on our policy up until he got a job that covered them, and I would be an asshole to change that.
Yeah.
But to this day, man, she still reposts all my stuff, converses with me. We talk on a daily basis, or not a daily, but on a weekly basis, I would say. But it's all about just being human. And that was, not to go back to the whole idea of this, but that was why I started doing the podcast, because, people like Perry, right? Perry's, from the outside world looking in, people would probably look at Perry and be like, oh my God, what, typical insurance, whatever. Yep. But once you actually have a conversation with Perry, he's not that way. And I hadn't met Perry until the day I started here. I didn't go through the typical interview process, so it was new to me. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't off-putting. It was because of the way he presented himself. Yeah. And he always, there was this little way he just made you feel fucking good about yourself.
And one of the things that really kind of cemented that mindset of who Perry is to me was when I hit my 100K, he invited me out to a dinner at Del Frisco's down in downtown Fort Worth. Yep. And it was Colin, Ricky, and myself, because we all hit our 100K in about a week span from each other. And so we all sat down, we all talked with him. I got to learn a little bit about who Perry is as a person. He told a couple of sentimental stories about him and his family and how he came to be. And it cemented this idea that when you look at HID advertisements, Perry is this very charismatic person. He almost comes off, he almost comes off as kind of a prick, and to lay people. And you're just like, man, there's no way this dude is this cocky in real life. And the bottom line is he's not. He really is a down to earth person. As crazy as that seems, you see him and you're like, this guy probably partied all throughout the 2000s and just lived life la vida loca. But in reality, what he actually did was he created an entire system to make multiple people better underneath of him. Not he could have just kept this to himself and become a multimillionaire by himself. But instead, he decided to transfer that wealth to multiple agents in this office and give them careers and give them lives that they wouldn't have. And one of the reasons why I am so thankful to that is because it made me realize that I'm not just another person who has to do academics. I could have gone back for a PhD if I really wanted to, but I was miserable doing it. COVID sucked the life out of me with that, and I could never go back to that again even if I thought I could. I would never want to.
Dude, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. But getting into this office and realizing the people who are here, there are people in this office who I actually think about like hanging out with and try to come up with plans to hang out with those people because I care about them. They're people who I sit in this office and I make jokes with all the time because I actually care about them. And one of the people who really instilled that in me was Perry, and letting me recognize that I'm not just another pawn in another system to another game. I am, I'm the queen, so to speak, in the chessboard. I can move wherever the fuck I want.
Yep.
I can do whatever I want. And most importantly, I can dominate my own career by just trying as hard as I can. When I first got in here, one of the things he mentioned was when your first 6 months you're here, put as much effort as you can into it.
Yep.
If I look back my first 6 months here, I can say I probably could have put more effort into it. But, hindsight's 20/20. Now I can look forward to the next 6 months and say, I'm ready to put forth even more. Now I'm looking at my career and saying, how can I logarithmically increase my career for not only myself, but the people who now operate under me?
Mm-hmm.
Because 7 months ago when I first started here, I didn't think, come September, I'm going to be part of an independent team with Justice and training new people underneath me as a big brother. I had no idea that was going to be a thing I was doing. It wasn't even a thought in my brain. And now I'm sitting here doing that, and I go home and I think at night, like, my people need to make a paycheck. What do I have to do to help them? That's the big thing that I worry about now, because I know I'm going to make my paycheck. I'm not worried about that part. Even if I have a crappy week, okay, no
Still
problem.
gonna make your money.
Yeah. Even if I have a crappy week, if I help my other people have great weeks, I'm okay with that. I can live and sleep restfully knowing that I helped new people get started with their careers the same way that Justice and Stoner and Perry and you and other people helped me get to that point.
Well, I mean, there's a certain fulfillment that you get, endorphin, whatever. But when you make money and seeing other people do it because of somewhat of your efforts is equally just as awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing about this was having authenticity, like knowing that you're like, there's a lot of people who like when they think of a health insurance agent, they're thinking of this big ass cubicle all across the entire room over here where everybody's wearing, a white dress shirt, short sleeve, crappy little half Windsor tie.
Yeah, basically like a used car salesman.
Yeah,
exactly.
You look like the most sad person. Like, you look like Mr. Incredible when he's still working at the cubicle in The Incredibles. Yeah. And so rather than...
It's a great reference, by the way.
I know, I'm full of them. But rather than, try to live that life of unsatisfactory behavior, kind of elevate yourself. Get yourself to a point where, like, if you want to travel the entire country while you do this, there are agents who do that. Like, the fact that you are able to do this is astounding. The fact that I can come in here first 6 months and make my old income from last year, having never done sales before, that is something that I find tremendous. There are so many people who can come into this and be successful. There are people who I look in this office and say, how the hell did you get into this? How did you become an agent? And there's some of the best agents in the company. I mean, 5 years ago, did you honestly think you'd be a health insurance agent?
No, dude. It's funny. That's why I started doing the podcast, because I woke up. I mean, COVID killed my business. I mean, I left corporate America, got into restaurant remodeling, and was mildly successful. I mean, we were the primary contractor for one of the largest the largest franchisee of 5 major concepts between Arby's, McAllister's, Popeyes, and Taco Bueno. I was remodeling literally 100 of them a month, between repaint, rebrand, whatever. I mean, we did 6 McDonald's. I mean, like, I did well. But then COVID killed my business, and my friend Stephanie, who worked for Usha for 7 years, had said, Nick, you need to sell health insurance. And I always said, fuck you, I'm not selling health insurance. And I woke up and I got the same fucking Indeed thing that you did. Hey, by the way, it was like, something management or whatever. It was not labeled health insurance. And when I got the message from Tierra or whoever it was, what's her name? Anyways, it said, you're going to meet with Derek Barry. And I'm like, dude, I know that fucking name. So I look online, and the only person I'm associated with or common friends with Derek Barry is my friend Stephanie, who worked for Usha, who still, by the way, receives $40,000 a year, hadn't written a policy in 5 years. She was fully vested. Anyway, I called her. I'm like, who is Derek Barry and why do we know him? She was like, why do you ask? And I'm like, well, because I have an interview with him on Monday, and this was a Friday. It was June 27th, the Friday that I got the message, and then my interview was on Monday. And she just called me immediately. No text, like just laughing, like, I can't believe, why are you talking to him? Well, I have an interview with him. And she was like, where at? And I was like, at Hearst. She goes, nope, you're not going to the Hearst office. And with all due respect to anybody listening that works in the Hearst office, it's not personal. But I would have, and being in that office, going back and seeing it, I would have died. I mean, I would not have been successful. My name wouldn't be on that board. I wouldn't be doing this, right?
Well, because the thing is, like, it's all a matter of office culture. Like,
100%.
having been in that office, there's a lot of great people there. But the difference is the person who runs that office versus the person who runs this office culture-wise.
Yep, 100%.
There isn't another Perry Lunsford in
Nope.
this country.
Can't recreate the healthy insurance dude. You can't recreate what he's done. You can try and duplicate it, but it is not going to be the same.
There may be other agents out there who try to emulate that or who try to be
there
their
are
own.
other agents out there that do that try to be Perry. But
And
it's
the
just
problem
not
is
the way.
what they end up coming across more as is Jordan Belfort more than Perry Lunsford. And I don't as good as salesman as Jordan Belfort is. I don't think anybody really wants to be him.
Have you ever seen I agree with that. Have you ever seen the video Perry did when he was in his Mustang in the bunny suit? Mm-hmm. That is arguably my most favorite video because that's fucking Perry. Yeah. And it's like, dude, you literally drove down Camp Bowie with a cigar in your mouth and made a video that has 30,000 views and God knows how many comments on it, and you sold a shit ton of money sold a shit ton of policies from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I just realized we've been doing this for 40 minutes.
No worries.
Now, as much as I will we could do a round 2, but let's cut this off and end the podcast because I think we'll probably lose retention. But even though we're amazing people, I told you earlier, if you want to, man, tell people about what where to find you, because at the end of the day, what separates us is just different personalities. I mean, we do business the same way, and so people will ultimately be attracted to you versus they will me.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If you're attracted to Mr. Tourigny, how can we find you?
I mean, I'm a pretty basic person. You can always find me on Facebook. My name is Andrew Tourigny, as atrocious as the last name is to pronounce, let alone spell. You can always find me there. I do have a company that we call Tripartite Health. As crappy as that name is too, you can thank my husband for that one. But reality, like, if you want me, you can just contact me at my phone number. That's where most people get me a hold of.
We'll put that right under my hand right here.
Yeah,
so where is that?
Absolutely.
What's the number?
352-229-1119. It looks fake, but I promise it's real.
Well, if it makes you feeling better, I decided that one day I want to brand myself as Health Coverage Made Easy because this whole thing. Then I bought the domain Health Coverage Made Easy and realized it's like the longest fucking thing I could have done. Like, I'm like, hey, what's your email address? So it's nick@healthcoveragemadeeasy.com. Yeah, there's 2 E's in there, by the way.
I mean, in reality, my husband was the one who came up with the name Tripartite Health because he's like, it's health, life, and security all bundled into one. And I was like, that's a great idea. But, yeah, exactly. Now clients look at that and they go, what the fuck is tripartite mean?
Dude, I wish I would.
I wish I knew.
I wish I would have bought hcme.com. And hey, what's HCME? Health Coverage Made Easy. That's it. Right, but we live and learn.
I would say live and learn. Change your name at some point.
I will. I'm in the process
make people forget who you are. It's kind of like just developing a new persona.
Yep.
Everybody's going to do it.
I'm rebranding my website currently. I'm using a company called Lead Revenue, and we'll get to that another day. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I have till everything goes live on November 1. It's a brand new website, brand new SEO, brand new lead generation software that I'm
Godspeed to you during open enrollment.
Yeah, well, it should be fun. I mean, I already get decent traction on my website, but that's neither here nor there. So, Mr. Tourigny, it was a pleasure. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
And if there's anything that else that we can do, I don't know why I said that, but
I'll come back on anytime though.
Yeah, actually, I've done 2 episodes with Jamie because we had to do part 1 and part 2. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to have the opportunity, man, because you and I, and just to be completely candid, right? I mean, anybody that's on this show, there's a different vibe with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people.
I'm the nerdiest, whitest, gayest guy you're going to have on the podcast. Fourth gayest.
No, Stoner doesn't count as the gayest, but definitely the nerdiest.
Was he even on it though?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, I've done one with.
I just tend to ignore things that he's been in.
No, I mean we had a good time. It was when the format was a little bit like we sat side by side versus across from each other, and so we just chatted up. I mean, Stoner and I can talk with Stoner for days on end because there's a lot of things that, as you well know, we resonate with.
He's probably the person who I resonate with the most in this entire office.
Yeah, me as well. As much as I'd love to say it's anybody else, I've always. I sat next to Stoner when I got put on the HID team, and that was, for me, I was his first agent. And I'm going to call you out, Stoner. You actually owe me a steak dinner at Del Frisco's for that. But that's a whole other conversation. But, Andrew, I appreciate your time. I really do.
Absolutely.
I look forward to talking to you soon.
Sounds good.
Cheers.